A dissident group of terrorists have taken Federation Ambassador Hawkins and his staff hostage. Tasha Yar and Lieutenant Worf set phasers to cut through. And something in the tunnels smells of Jameson. Party in the tunnels. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hi, hello, you guys. Jameson.
I know it.
After my Irish heart.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. I like to smell Jameson too. And today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 15, Too Short a Season. So, there's a joke behind that. Story by Michael Michaelian and teleplay by Michael Michaelian and D.C. Fontana. Directed by Rob Bowman. This was February 6th, 1988. Special thanks to Grandpa One, a.k.a. Tim Baum, for sponsoring this entire season. How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Oh, mighty fine, laddie. Mighty fine.
Now you're in the Irish mode. Here we go.
Oh, top of the morning to you.
Oh, just a wee bit of Jameson.
Didn't you notice how many times they kept saying Jameson? And they literally said, something smells of Jameson in the episode. I'm like, okay, now this is not an accident. They're doing this on purpose. They're trying to get us ready for the weekend.
Yeah, right. So this is the third time I think we've seen Rob Bowman.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we liked him. So yeah, he was sort of our fave.
Do you
remember?
Yeah, do you remember anything about Mr. Bowman? I don't really know much about him other than he's still working.
Oh yeah,
amazingly.
I mean, he was young. So he had a lot of energy, a lot of charisma. You know, he spoke our language. He was just playful, you know, a lot of times, because we were a rowdy bunch, you know, we were quite cut ups, and we got into a little hot water for that at one point. And there was one director that complained to Rick Berman that we were out of control and he was losing command of the set. And, you know, we got a lecture.
Wow, that much.
Rick Berman came down to the set and pulled us into Patrick's ready room and sat us all down and said, guys, I don't know what's going on here, but. And by the way, when they said action and it was time to deliver, we always were prepared, always on the mark, you know, but in between setups and stuff, we'd be, you know, like the rowdy school children that, you know, the substitute teacher can't control. And we'd just be cracking each other up.
Who was the worst?
Yeah. And so we didn't know this director. I can't remember which director it was, but an older gentleman who just probably wasn't used to this kind of craziness that we were all sort of, you know, letting off steam. Believe me, it was long hours, long days. And, Brent particularly and Frakes are just absolute ham bones. I mean, they're just ridiculous. They would break into Broadway show tunes and, you know, shuffle around, and Jonathan would yell very loudly and, you know, just ridiculous, stupid stuff. So, yeah.
That's what Michael Dorn keeps talking about.
Yeah. Rob could flow with it. You know, he was game and didn't have a problem with any of it. And we just liked him.
Cool. Yeah, because Michael Dorn always brings that up. He's like, "Yeah, Next Generation had a lot of fun, but Deep Space Nine, you guys were serious."
Yeah, he always does an impression of coming into Deep Space Nine and being like the monks and going to be like, doing like when he went from one to the other. But that's because you spoiled him at Next Generation. You guys were having a party every day.
Yeah, it was just stupid. You know, just silly, stupid stuff. Not even, you know, sophisticated wit. It was just ridiculous, over the top. And I am so easy to crack up that, you know, they just loved it. I was just peeing my uniform every other setup.
Good thing the lower half was black then.
Yeah, right.
Was anybody not with it? Was anybody like kind of like, come on, guys, seriously, I'm trying to work here.
Patrick, he really lightened up over the years. I mean, these guys have confided that to me, you know, as when I see them, because as a matter of fact, when we were pulled into that ready room and given that, you know, talking to, I don't remember this, but they remind me of this, you know, that I chimed in and said, oh, you know, Rick, we're just having fun. You know, we're just trying to make light of the hours and the tension and you know, just entertain ourselves. And Patrick turned around and said, no, we're not here to have fun. This is not about fun. You know, and he yelled at me for saying that. And then, you know, he kind of loosened up as the years went on.
You know, I remember watching, not to get too far off track.
Marina should have said, Patrick, I sense
your anger.
Yeah.
Damn it, counselor, I know. I am angry. No, but I remember seeing
wound tight.
I remember seeing the Captain's documentary by 455 Films. Everybody go check that out if you haven't yet, not to get too far off track. But I remember a moment that really got me was when because William Shatner was directing and conducting the interviews, and he was talking to Patrick Stewart, and Patrick mentioned what you're talking about. And I remember him saying, we're not here to have fun, damn it, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then he did admit that in later years, he loosened up, and then he would start screwing around and have fun. And Shatner very astutely goes, so they changed you. Because he was trying to control everybody to be, you know, more in line with, and eventually the crew changed him. And then, you know, Patrick has this realization. He's like, yeah, it was just a really powerful moment in that documentary that I had a flashback to when you mentioned that.
There you go. I'm validated here. Yeah, absolutely. It really was the case, you know. And again, Patrick's coming from a different sort of, you know, school of theater, and I don't know what, you know, although I have friends that are in the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they are very goofy. They
really, I didn't expect that.
They do stuff live on stage. I mean, they will find a way. You know, they'll be doing like Richard III, and the night they'll say we have to insert the word chicken. You know, and they'll find a way to do, you know, they'll be doing Richard III in all their spectacular Royal Shakespeare glory, and just, you know, and say, you know, thou goest down the road with thy chicken, sir, and no one blinks an eye. You know, the audience has no idea what has just happened.
Yeah, but the fellow actors got to keep a straight face now.
Exactly. So there's a lot of humor to that.
Wow. Well, that's all great stuff. Speaking of keeping a straight face, by the way, everybody at home, in the second segment, Denise was telling us a really cool story about what she was doing before and during the auditioning process. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we also have this episode here, which when I saw it, when it first came up, I remembered it. A lot of times I just have these vague familiarities of, oh, you know, like the one with the snakes and the dogs. I remember that. Or the one where the Ferengi are doing this. You know, just these tiny little recollections of these. And this one I go, yes, the one with the old guy with, and basically, Cirroc, I thought of you only this time watching it through, because I was like, this is a fountain of youth kind of story, right? Or at least partly that. And, you know, Cirroc is always very good with knowing these old, you know, fables and historical stories. And I realized this episode wasn't my favorite. When I remember back in the day, wasn't my favorite. However, when I was watching it this time, I was like, this is a story. This is a mystery. This is it's almost like a fable or a take on a fable. And maybe they even say, let's do a Fountain of Youth story or something like that. But I don't know, Cirroc, I was wondering your take on that, if you had any thoughts on that kind of approach.
Yeah, I think that the idea was a good idea. Um, it just wasn't executed in properly for me. It was just not done right. But the idea was good because we've seen this idea in the movie, for example, Benjamin Button, with Brad Pitt, where he starts the movie out really old and he reverses through the movie, right? He's opposite ages or de-ages. So that works in that context. We also saw prior to this Next Generation episode in Twilight Zone, in the episode Kick the Can. And that's when, you had all of those senior citizens, they were living in that household, and they said, let's go outside and play the game of Kick the Can. And one of them didn't want to play. The one who went to those of them that did play the game became youthful again, and reverted back to childhood. So
reminds me of Cocoon.
That actually, Cocoon also is another example of this kind of storyline. So it's a good story. It could be done well. The problem for me was the extra backstory they tried to attach to it. Could have been a great story about a man who found this cure and he's going through this process. He's having this bout with his loved one, who I thought that was a good story that they could have dug out more. There was things there. He showed some selfishness by taking the other, her dosage of it. There could have been a lot more play there as far as interaction. I like the idea of it. I just think it was poorly executed with the attaching it to the storyline of these hostages and attaching it to some peace deal that he negotiated and that he feels bad about. All of that stuff, I didn't really need those kinds of things. It could have been that he's going back and he wants to redo something in life, but not necessarily this peace deal and hostage scenario situation, which I felt was very cheesy and kind of. I was like, why does this matter? Like how many hostage situations are going on in this galaxy right now, and why does this one exactly matter?
Yeah, screw the hostages.
Yeah,
right.
And yeah, the concept of this, this machismo kind of thing going on, where he's got to get back to this, virile male energy, to be able to confront this situation, because he's going to take him physically. It's just like, I mean, it's so weird, this story, that first of all, he did this to begin with and then confesses it to Picard. Like, I was wondering, what is Picard going to do now with this information? I mean, this is so illegal.
Yeah.
What he's done.
Yeah.
And he's an admiral. I mean, at the very least, you can kind of justify, well, yes, but there's hostages at stake still. So I've got to sort of put that on hold for a moment. But like, there was no, and then of course he dies, so there's no getting back to that. But it's like, that's really intense what he's just admitted to. We haven't come across a Starfleet officer yet who has really violated everything that
he falsified the records.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just, the whole thing was hard to kind of track in any like empathetic way for me, and feel who am I siding with here? They're awful and he's awful, and what are you guys doing with this information? And there is an interesting kind of notion, and again, in the 80s, this stuff, there's always been this chasing of something to make us young and beautiful again? What lengths will people go to? We see it. It never leaves us. There's a whole thing I was listening to yesterday on NPR about everybody's taking this Ozempic, this diabetes drug to lose weight. It's like this miraculous weight loss drug. But the people who have diabetes, who actually need this to live, can't get it.
Because it's flying off the shelves.
All the Beverly Hills,
come on,
beauty queens are stockpiling Ozempic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shot a week, and what lengths we'll go to, to have this youth, this beauty, this flawlessness.
Well, we can't all stay young and beautiful like you did, Denise. So go easy on us. We all have to figure out our own ways to make it happen. Me, I
I'll give you that
in
20
oatmeal
later.
And shit. That 20. Yeah. Well, the other part of that was that when the admiral's confiding in Picard that he sold arms to both sides, my first thought was how very Ferengi of him. The Ferengi would be so proud. I feel like they've even done that in a Deep Space Nine episode where Quark just like, that's his strategy. He's like, well, you sell the arms to this side and you sell the arms to this side. Now, of course, the Ferengi are supposed to tell us exactly what not to do if you are the Federation. So I think what we have is just like an old, desperate man who really, he wants to right all the bad that he's done and is completely selfishly willing to do whatever it takes to do it because he's like, I'm on my way out anyway. So what do I care? And he's even screwing over his own wife in the process, not talking with her, just bad decisions all around, it seems like, with this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a problem with it because, he just now decides to take this particular elixir thing that he had. I guess he had gotten it a long time ago. The timeline of it didn't make sense for me, that he just now takes this thing exactly when he gets on the ship. I didn't see it make sense. The other thing that bothered me was, it was a 45 years since he negotiated the treaty deal. He tells Picard, the official record says one thing, but he did something illegal. Then he falsified the records. He's admitting guilt and admitting a crime to another Starfleet officer, which would, to me, instantly make you invalid as far as rank and giving orders. As soon as you reveal that to Picard, I would say that I no longer can take orders from you, nor will I allow you to give orders.
Yeah, you're not in charge of this mission anymore, bro.
Yeah.
You should be in the brink. Like, you should be held right now.
Right. We're going to hold you until you have to face your court-martial.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the normal code of conduct. If somebody reveals something, that level of criminality. Now, given the circumstance, like you said, he's hostage negotiation and all of this stuff that was really hard for me to follow as well. Why it mattered so much. I just didn't. It really felt cheesy for me in the moment when they finally had that final matchup with Karnas and Jameson, and the way it played out, it felt like a school play. In my opinion, it felt like me watching my high school play, and a bunch of us came up with this kind of cool little scene. But that's how well thought out.
You can write better than that, Cirroc.
Yeah,
don't be so hard on yourself.
I just wasn't feeling it, and I would have actually, if they went with this story and they were going to continue with this story, I would have preferred that Jameson continue to de-age until he's actually an infant. And I would have liked to have seen Picard hand over an infant Jameson.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Absolutely.
That's a really good point, because then at this point, can you really put a toddler or a baby in the bridge? That would be a really good moral play right there.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
So now are you going to hold this baby? Are you going to
be he's just a widow baby. And Troy would have Picard's ass if he handed him over. She'd be like, "No, you don't. I sense no anger in this baby."
Right?
But it would have made the point that, that they're trying to make about, one, you can't undo what you've done already. Two, getting revenge. Will it satisfy you if you have that revenge on this baby? Would you still feel the same satisfaction in your revenge? And that would play out better for me in this storyline. It would have been like the Solomon fable, the biblical Solomon fable, where there's two mothers who come forward to King Solomon and say they are both the mother. And he has to decide which one is the mother. And so he says, "Okay, I will split the baby in two and give each of you half."
Great deal.
Now, one of the women says, "Fine, do that and give me my half." And the other woman says, "No, don't do that. Just give her the baby." Wow. Now, what did you think Solomon decides who the real mother is?
That's the real mom. Yeah.
That's the real mom who won't split the baby. Yeah.
Right.
Because no mother would split their baby.
Right. And so to me, if you use that kind of a parable in this situation, then you could have had a better story to tell about, exacting revenge. And does it matter? Does it have the same gravity if it's done on a baby version of that same person?
Right.
It seems like a common theme with these first season episodes is that a lot of them crack open a really interesting moral play or a really interesting thing, and then just don't quite stick the landing, or they open up this moral situation but then jump over to another one, or you know what I mean? Like they're still trying to get their footing on how to really knock that one out of the park, and they open up all these thoughts for us, and then we're left kind of going like, I wish they would have just, that's a really good idea.
Absolutely. And they're still having these sort of morality tales, these plays, but they attach on to the alien adventure ship, the gung-ho, gotta save the day. So they're not organically merging, but they don't trust that the morality play can be enough without the action adventure, glommed on, because this is what it's about. We want to get to some action here.
That's a great point. Well, let's hit up our break. That's a really good point. They got to force in that sci-fi somehow, and it's just not the seamless merging that we're used to or hoping to have. So we're going to take a super quick break, everybody. Also, there's an actor in this episode that has been in another series of Star Trek. We'll tell you about that on the other side as well. And it's not Patrick Stewart or an idiot we know. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Seventh Rule with two Star Trek legends, Denise Crosby and Cirroc Lofton.
Hey, guys.
We've got our Trivioids of the week, and here they come. A dissident group of terrorists have taken Federation Ambassador Hawkins and his staff hostage. Mordon 4 has finally gained peace after decades of civil war. Admiral Mark Jameson has some body changes. Admiral Mark Jameson has Iverson's disease. The natives at Cerberus 2, which I kept wanting to call Cerberus, but it's Cerberus 2, have a process that rejuvenates the body, gives you your youth back. Arden and Gilmore died a long time ago. Tasha Yar and Lieutenant Worf set phasers to cut through, and something in the tunnel smells of Jameson. Okay. Oh,
See, I heard cannabis too, but then I had to replay it.
Maybe you were right. Maybe that's what it was. So real quick, the actor was, what is his name? It is the fellow that played Karnas, Michael Pataki, if I remember correctly. Let me look him up and make sure.
Familiar.
Yeah, Michael Pataki. He is the guy in the legendary Tribbles episode of the original series that starts the big brawl that says, I didn't mean to say the Enterprise should be hauled away with garbage. I meant the Enterprise should be hauled away as garbage, the Klingon. And you remember him in Trials of Tribulations as well in Deep Space Nine when they revisited that episode. But that is the guy. Let me pull him up right here. That's him. There he is.
Wow.
And then that is him in this episode. Really cool. Oh, he's from North Hollywood, or was there. That's cool.
Inventor of the walkie-talkie.
This guy's on fire. Somebody douse him. But also, real quick, Denise, you were telling us that fun story before we started recording about what you were doing when you auditioned for this role, and I'd never heard this story, so I was hoping you could go into detail a little bit about it.
So I was shooting a film called Miracle Mile that Steve DeJarnette directed and was being produced by this very cool independent film company called Hemdale, which was John Daly and David Hemming's company back then in the 80s. And they were really dedicated to supporting filmmakers and with an independent eye. And John Daly had been like production head at Warner Brothers, and he left and started this company with David Hemming. So it was a very cool, supportive people, great environment. Mare Winningham and Anthony Edwards were the stars of this film, and it's extraordinary. It takes place. Anthony Edwards answers a phone ringing in a phone booth outside of Johnny's diner on the corner of Fairfax and Wilshire, which we got for filming. We filmed at Johnny's for a week at night, all night long. And this phone is randomly ringing, and he decides to answer it. And it's a kid in a nuclear silo who thinks he's called his parents to say goodbye because we've launched a strike. And a nuclear warhead is heading our way. But he wanted to say goodbye. And Anthony Edwards goes, wait a minute, blah, blah, blah. And so the film begins. Is this real? If it's real, we got to make a move. Where do we go to? And okay, so it just is this really cool script. So when I got the audition for The Next Generation, again, there was no script we were given. We were given just sides, which for those of you who don't know, it's just the scene that you're auditioning, you're reading for the audition. So it's all this space jargon and mumbo jumbo. I have no idea what the hell I'm reading, even though I had seen the original Star Trek, many, many years earlier. But I wasn't quite sure about this, if it was any good. I couldn't even tell if this was good, bad, indifferent, what the hell it's about. And remember, I was reading for the part of Troy originally. So I remember taking my sides into the makeup trailer on Miracle Mile and actually hiding them under my script for Miracle Mile because I didn't want anyone to see I was auditioning for this. Because it seemed pretty dicey. Like, this is kind of like is this going to even be anything you want to be in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was framing this story with you guys about what it was like in the 80s to be a young actor and be, you know, in this hotbed of talent, and, you know, reading all the plays we were reading and doing all the theater we were doing. And, you know, television was not what you aspired to back then. And so we, you know, it was just kind of, you know, questionable whether this was a good move on my part. But, you know, I didn't really have much choice. I was, you know, just starting out, and I wasn't in any position to start saying no, you know, to things.
And you're auditioning
Do you remember,
to be Troy. Sorry, go ahead, Cirroc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you remember if there was anything, like if they were being secretive about the title of the show and all of this kind of, because you know, nowadays they black out scripts,
Yeah.
they print your name on it, and they have all this
absolutely.
do not copy. Yeah.
Well, and I always have to sign non-disclosure agreements, you know, NDAs.
Right.
And yeah, they didn't have anything like that, but they did, they wouldn't give you a whole script, you know, so you had to fill in. I mean, we knew it was a next generation of Star Trek, but I didn't know what, you know, a Beta Z or, you know, any of these creatures are, or, you know, who I'm referring to, or
a Ferengi, you know,
exactly. And I'm going, you know, as you do, you've just got to kind of come up with some story in your own mind. And I remember going in for the first time to meet the casting director, Junie Lowry. And
who's very sweet and amazing, by the way.
Amazing. And asking her, what in the hell am I reading here? What is this? What is this person? When, you know, well, she's kind of empathic, and but again, Troy was envisioned as this like kind of Icelandic, you know, statuesque, cool drink of water, you know, very, very different. And somewhere they switched us.
Yeah, I remember Marina actually auditioned also to be Tasha Yar, if I remember correctly. She was in the short list, and so was Rosalind Chow also auditioned to be Tasha Yar. All kinds of names being passed around in these old lists. It's really interesting how much everybody kind of switched around. Anyway. Well, that's really cool. So hopefully your friend was able to translate the sides for you.
Enough. I don't think Junie quite, you know, knew what was happening either. She just said, you know, it's sort of like this, and well, let's see what you come up with, you know?
Yeah. And then 35 years later, it's not any clearer yet. Now we're watching the finished product and you're like, nope, still doesn't make sense.
What just happened? Right.
I still don't get it. I still don't get it.
I know.
Yeah. But there were some moments though that I did like. I mean, I didn't detest the whole episode. I just felt like, you know, it could have been a lot better. And I understand the difficulty of having an actor who has to play all the age ranges, the old, the young. It's not easy to do that. But the moments that I liked, I for example, Picard and Beverly had some bonding in this episode. There were moments when he actually treated her with respect, and I liked it. I thought he was being sensitive to her for the first time. Especially when she was saying, you know, I have the cure. I think, you know, I'm sensing something. And he says, well, you sound like Troy, you know, and he realized that he had offended her at that moment and caught it, and then said, come to the bridge and, you know, evaluate him at the time. So I felt that was a good moment for him to catch himself being a jerk, and fix it on the
Right.
spot, and also show sensitivity to this woman that has been nothing but sweet to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that scene. I don't know, what did you think about that moment?
Cirroc, I just wanted to jump on that real quick about the Beverly and Picard thing. It reminds me that recently when we did a Star Trek Picard review in the live chat, a couple people were talking. I think DJ Kitty Cat, shout out, was one of them that said that Beverly Crusher always had a little bit of intuition. There were a couple episodes in which her intuition was mentioned, and it kind of comes out in a recent Picard episode like a week or two ago. And this may be our first hint at that, where, Troy is an empath, but Beverly Crusher has a little bit of intuition that I think comes from her family. There's like an episode there. And there's also an episode later on called Cause and Effect, one of my favorite episodes, with Kelsey Grammer in there. And it's a great Guinan episode. And it's a great Beverly Crusher episode. And she has a little bit of intuition there. And in this case, she did have, like you mentioned, some kind of intuition where Picard mistakenly says, "Oh, that sounds like a Troy thing," but it's a slight difference that's going on there. But I just want to start.
And he caught that.
Yeah,
he caught that, and he recognized that he was in the wrong kind of for dismissing her intuition. Yeah. And then he said, "Okay, I'm going to bet on it. I'm going to follow up and allow you to follow through with your intuition and give you the authority to do so." That I thought was good leadership on Picard's part, and good acting.
Right. He walks it back a little bit, and he catches himself. The interesting thing that I kind of noticed with this scene is I'm still unclear at this point, where they stand with each other.
Yeah.
Because sometimes she's calling him Jean-Luc. But all through this, she says, "Sir." And they're alone together when she's calling him sir. So it's inconsistent for me, this establishment, sort of like what is going on with Riker and Troy. Like, where are you guys? I would have liked by this point to really have some consistency with, and so we have a point to build from, that it deepens or it gets more intimate, or because I can't contextualialize these relationships right now. I don't know.
Well, for me, I can. They feel like mistresses relationships, where the woman knows that you have a main person and I'm just the mistress. And I feel like that's some of what I'm seeing is, it's almost as if the main woman for Picard is his ship.
Totally. His career,
yeah. And his career, right? And that's his main, that's his wife.
Good point.
Right.
And everything else is just like, it's like we can't be together. We can have moments, we can share moments, but you realize they're married. It's like that to me. Yeah. His Beverly is like, she can only be a mistress. She can never be his wife, because, he's already married to his life, to his career, to being the captain.
Right. So it's just a passing little moment of flirtation that kind of rears itself in moments.
Right. Because he can't make her number one to him, because number one for him is
Will
sitting
Riker.
in that chair.
Oh. Right. Well, and certainly, and that's a whole other show. And yes, but it would be nice, though. I mean, they're setting little seeds of this. Yeah. They're little cookies, and I just can't get a sense of where and they don't have to be together, by any means right now. And they shouldn't be. We want to grow with that. We want to see that develop. But it's like,
a conversation would be nice to just say, even if they just say, hey, look, we can't do this, but let's just keep it cordial. And, just like a kind of like a conversation, acknowledging whatever we're seeing, because it's kind of weird to leave it in this
that
limbo
development
space.
Is at a snail's pace.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Denise. They drop these nice little nuggets where you start to kind of lean in, or you start to go, okay, I think I understand. And then that's all. It's like the slightest bit of hint. It's like flavors of LaCroix, like the jokes of like, it's not hint of lime, it's hint of lime. And so these are like that, where it's just like, it's just the slightest little shadow of a hint, and that's all we get through 15 episodes.
Yeah. And then it goes away. I'm going.
So it's like a workplace relationship where one is not allowed. That's what it feels like. It's like if you were hooking up with somebody at work, but it was not permitted because you could get fired for doing it, you would have their relationship, which it would look like that.
Yeah.
If you were trying to hide it or something. That's what I feel. It feels like that.
Kind of the standoffishness and the not sure how to address it. Like her calling him sir in their private moments doesn't seem to match. Sir on the bridge, Jean-Luc but then they flip-flop them, and then sometimes she's calling him Jean-Luc on the bridge and sir in the chorus. It's
when that happens, even when she does it, address him as Jean-Luc, that feels like that's really familiar. For you to say that. They are.
And I bet you, just for the record, I bet you that if Dr. Crusher had a former love interest, the way Troy did, pop up in some scene in this first season, that Picard would go exactly like Riker did. He would be extremely upset about it and jealous of this person who pops up, claiming to be in love with her or whatever it was.
Can you imagine the guy comes up to hug Crusher and Picard's like gets up in between them. You're right. He totally would.
He would be. I know he would go. He'd be pissed. He would be just as upset as Riker was, if not more. But another moment that I really liked too was when this Jameson guy, when he finally we see signs of his youth, and he's telling his wife, I've got enough for the both of us, like he's trying to get her on the team, right? And he looks over at Picard and he says, I'm fitter than you are, Picard. And the look on Picard's face, he does one of those, this guy's really full of himself. Like, it was a beautiful moment. I love the response in Picard's face when he hears him say that to him. He's bragging about how in shape he is and how, he's better. I'm more fitter than you are, Picard, and I'm getting younger. So he's like, and I'm getting better. And he was bragging and feeling himself. And Picard kind of is like, okay, I love the moment on his face, but I also liked the wife in this episode. I thought the wife was Annie. Yeah. I thought she was, when she says, but she didn't tell me, I felt her in that moment. I really felt her. She delivered that because it came across to me. It's like, wow, why wouldn't you tell her? You're a jerk, and you guys grow old together. You wouldn't want to grow young together. Like,
yeah.
It was a betrayal.
At that moment, they said two song titles in a row. So like she says, I will always love you. And then right after that, he said, or it was close to it, he said, like directly after that, he says, Annie with the golden hair. And I was like, that's like Sister with the Golden Hair by America. Really cool 70s and 80s And anyway, it was just a weird thing where I just heard 2 song titles in a row. Every once in a while, I think the Star Trek writers are like testing us, like putting Jameson everywhere, putting song titles everywhere. Like, I don't know what's going on. But
I heard a song too.
What was that?
I heard Michael Jackson's Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie?
Very nice.
You've been hit by the smooth criminal. Yeah, that's a little jingle in that song. Smooth criminal.
There was also
Annie,
really cool by Riker, a really good look by Riker. Speaking of the good looks, it was right before they go to the title sequence, the theme song, when the old dude, shows up and beams in, and he says to Picard, like, I'm taking over the mission or whatever, and he says, that's okay, right? And then Riker does his patented look over at Picard. Picard says, yes, of course. And then Riker looks back, and he like looks back at the guy and he goes, kind of gives him like a squinty eye. And I'm like, from the very get-go, Jonathan, I've always noticed Jonathan acts like a director. He wants to make sure that the audience knows what he's thinking. I've always noticed that about his acting is he's very deliberate in his acting. So he's thinking like a director. Make sure the audience knows that now I'm looking at this person. Now I'm focusing on this. And I don't know, it's very deliberate. And I love the way he's always kind of telling stories with his reactions.
Huh.
But the problem I have with it, though, at least in this particular moment, because I don't really have a problem with Jonathan at all, but in this instant, I feel like he telegraphs the distrust. So as soon as that guy Jameson comes on, he looks at him like, I don't know about you.
Yep.
and it makes me think that. So it already sets him up. It's telegraphing that he's going to be somebody to not trust. And I feel like he shouldn't do that in some instances. I think he should pull back off of that and make me feel like, I don't know, it may go either way. The guy might be a good guy.
See, it's because he read the entire script, so he knows how it ends.
Script.
Right.
See, and, I just read that part, so I won't give you that.
That little, the new, right. There's the great, what is it? The great story. Oh, Toshiro Mifune, the great Japanese actor, is doing Bridge on the River Kwai. And, David Lean is directing this monumental film, and Toshiro gets to the set, and they're going to blow up the bridge, that day. It's just huge special effects. And so David Lean pulls, Toshiro over to the side, and he said, so how do you feel this is the day that you're going to die? And Toshiro Mifune looks at him and says, I die? He never read more than, what his dialogue was. He had no dialogue, so he didn't read it.
Yeah.
So how about the makeup in the beginning?
There's actually a story about that, and our good friend Dr. Anne Marie just sent that in, and I think she's going to be on the free for all right on the other side of this. So maybe we'll let her tell us the story. If she's not there, then I'll relay it. But yeah, there is definitely something to do with that makeup there.
I hope so. Okay, good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I want to add something too with the look though, because there was another moment when Jonathan gives a look that I really liked. When Jameson gets out of the wheelchair and Picard says, "You want to take the con," and he gets out. Frakes whips his head around so hard as he stands up. It's one of the great moments that he does one of these.
So subtle. Blink and you miss it, Yeah.
Wow. I love that guy. So let's.
I'm surprised he didn't get a whiplash.
Yeah, it was one of those whiplash moments.
Let's hit our free-for-all in just a second, everybody. And on our way out, we'd like to give a very special thanks to our friends, Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales. Oh, by the way, made a very funny joke. We'll mention that on the other side of this as well. Yvette Blackmon, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arukin, Titus Muller. Yes, that was a good one. Darlena Marie, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, aka Crewman Guy, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, the Dark Lord Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Jed Thompson, Luther Haynes Jr., Dr. Courtney Lewis, Beth Ernest, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason Okun. Everybody stick around. We've got so much more to discuss, and we'll be right back on the seventh rule. Everybody, welcome back to the seventh rule. This is the free-for-all. Malissa Longo is here wearing a cool family shirt. Ooh, look at that. You can find that in the description box below, as is Justin Weir. Check his out. Wow, a lot of fun shirts today. Eve England out in Wales is wearing a shirt made by Malissa. You can get that at theintrovertedrepublic.com. Anna Post is taking a break. She'll be back. She left her post. Dr. Susan V. Gruner's holding up her Ferengi shirt that Malissa also made. Dr. Muhammad Noor is wearing a smile, as always. Mai is live in Tokyo. Oh, that's a fun shirt. I like that one.
Made that one too.
Dr. Stephanie Baker is also here out in Seattle. The Dark One, Chris McGee, is making wearing a Scott Jensen creation. That's the seventh rule shirt with Aaron's birthday secretly snuck in there. Dr. Courtney Lewis is here, science officer. Carrie Schwent, Star Trek shirt of sorts. Homer Frizzell has his new USS Titan shirt and Yankees hat for Baseball Town. And Allison Leach Hyde is wearing a brand new seventh rule self-sealing stem bolt shirt. Wow, look at that.
Whoa.
You guys really dressed up today. All right, real quick, great stuff. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
This is a setup for this season. This is a real setup. Okay. 5.9. 5.9.
Interesting. Anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
Yeah, I was thinking about 5.8, 5.9.
Yeah, but you're working with the metric system. That's not.
That's in Celsius.
5.0.
5.0.
Right.
Oh, like a Mustang.
Very nice. Yeah. Anybody else? It is a whopping 6.1.
Wow. No way.
Okay.
Eve is pissed. Actually, Eve, go ahead and tell everybody the hilarious joke you made about the title of this episode.
I'm gonna get hate mail now. Well, this definitely isn't too short a season one, is it? So.
Send your mail, everybody, to Eve England out in Wales. Box. All right. Malissa Longo, would you please do us the favor of getting us started on the right track, please?
Okay.
Bye.
Yes. Okay. So I do have to point out a quote between Picard and Data, where Data says, "Their phasers are set to kill." And Picard says, "Thank you, Mr. Data. I've heard that sound before." I don't know why I thought that was funny, but it was funny to me. And also I liked Picard's quote, "Age and wisdom have their graces too," which was one of the highlights of this episode for me, that quote. A couple other things that I did like about the episode was the scenes between Picard and Dr. Crusher. They have great chemistry. And I think in every episode that we see more cohesiveness from the actual crew itself. But overall, I personally would like to see more stories that center on the crew of the Enterprise rather than it centering on a guest or a guest alien or something like that. Because I would like to see how these people who are living on a starship learn to coexist with each other, coming from different backgrounds and all these things, and then the people who they interact with, these alien species, that helps to enhance the stories that are focused on the crew who are learning to coexist with each other and other races. For me, there's not enough of that, and I would like to bond with the crew that we are supposedly supposed to be invested in from week to week. So those are my comments.
Good points. We started to get that at the Naked Now, and then that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Justin? Don't talk about the episode. We want to know more about you. How are you today, and what did you think of this episode?
Well, I was born in Michigan. No. This episode, it doesn't do it for me. The whole aging rapidly or the Benjamin Button, the trope that they use in the Star Trek episodes, I just don't really care for them. I don't know what it is, but what did I wrote down some fun facts that I looked up about this episode. There was an alternate ending at first, and Jameson would have survived, but he would have been reduced to 14 years old and had no memory of his wife. Also, that wheelchair, $10,000.
What?
That's what I.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I found that out too.
I wonder the makeup looks like that then. They used to lose their makeup on
Yes.
They had headlights. The wheelchair.
I guess by the time they got to Deep Space Nine, they made a much simpler wheelchair for that one episode. Again, this is the internet, so take that for what it's worth. I think Jameson is kind of a POS. Like, what did he say? To balance out he gave weapons to both sides. Like, okay, we're cool. This is the only Jameson we need, okay?
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to say. Oh, tonight, Netflix and chill, we're all going to get that Glenn Iverson disease.
Reference to Iverson's disease that riddled that. I wanted Picard when Jameson got younger to call him young man, just to kind of.
Yeah. Melissa, you stole my favorite quote, so I'll let that one go. that one got me too.
And you guys are shirt twins.
Yeah. Great minds.
I love it.
Eve England is out in Wales, and she's here to tell us why this is her favorite episode of the first season so far.
Well, I didn't really like it, but I kind of interpreted lots into it that made me enjoy it more than I probably should have or that it deserved. So what I did like about it, and I don't know whether this was intended because it didn't say this in the companion, but I did kind of get loads of sort of Faustian vibes from the story as a whole. You had Admiral Jameson who made this deal where he regains his youth, but then he ultimately ends up in a sort of metaphorical hell, sort of fit that kind of Faustian trope, I thought, really well. So when I was looking at it and I was thinking, oh yeah, okay, he's arrogant, he's not really likable, he's really proud. He admits to basically compromising his morals on so many different occasions. And then I thought, and then he's, you've got this de-aging process and you've got this really gross kind of, with the makeup, I thought kind of added to that sort of monster element to it. So it's very much like sort of the lesser Faustian story of Oscar Wilde's portrait of Dorian Gray. So, and I very much thought that, even the ending was kind of aligned with that, where, Dorian obviously ends up unintentionally killing himself, which is what Jameson ends up doing as well. And they even use the word or Jameson uses the word soul, and then Picard at the end sort of talks about how, what is it, the pursuit of youth is futile. And I was like, well, yeah, that's the message that you get from a Faustian story, is that, you know, you have to be aware of those, you know, things, and trying to get the unattainable and things that end up, you know, corrupting your soul. So I'm not sure that was intended, but thinking of it in that way did improve the score from maybe like a 4 for me.
See, 4.
And Dr. Muhammad Noor is also here. What are your thoughts on this episode about Admiral Jack Daniels?
So there's some thoughts on the Admiral. One thing I'll say first that I liked about the episode was the use of shadows, because it's interesting that when we watch shows, everybody's always in full light all the time, and obviously that's not true in real life. So that I thought was, although it was obviously used very strategically in this, it was interesting seeing people like in the shadow when needed to be. The thought that inspired me, I kept on thinking, like, how could that work? And I was thinking, like, well, okay, so with aging, and this is something probably Dr. Stephanie Baker probably knows better than me as an MD, but I was thinking with aging, one of the things, you lose a lot of like oil and stuff like that in your skin. So I'm thinking, like, is he consuming a lot of fat to try to compensate for that, to keep the skin tight? And then what happened to his gray hair? Like, I'm assuming he didn't just grow a new head of hair really fast. Maybe? I don't know. Maybe there were scenes we weren't seeing with him, like, you know, eating butter and then hair just growing out and being clipped and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, fun ride.
Good points, Muhammad. Yeah, that was my one big nitpick too, was how does his I can follow his hair, his face stretching out, or I don't know, but for some reason, even my sci-fi dork mind can follow all that except for his hair actually changing color as the day progresses. But yeah, Dr. Stephanie Baker's here. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, my shirt, you didn't talk about my shirt. That Melissa,
nice.
This is a Melissa
it's
shirt.
a new Melissa
Another
creation.
One. Right? I bought this at STLV from Melissa. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I really like it. So this episode is an average one for me because the main character is, of course, like a guest star. But I do like the premise of the de-aging, although the makeup is really hard to look at. I guess I'm a sci-fi nerd that the hair doesn't bother me. I can believe that the hair changes as he gets younger. As Muhammad was saying, I found the vibe really spooky with the shadows and the music. Every time they would reveal that he got younger, right? They were revealing it and he was in the shadows and they put the light on and it was like, oh, he's younger. I also wanted to give a shout out to costume because I really liked Anne's outfits, especially her blue one. I tried to find a photo, but I couldn't find one in time to highlight that blue outfit. My favorite scene was at the very end when Geordi and Data are on the bridge and they give each other their bro look. And I think that becomes a signature for them moving forward. And I was wondering, is this when they start it? It's fun. And the other thing I thought was interesting is when they're down on the planet, the admiral's giving orders to the away team and everybody's kind of uncomfortable.
We're hearing an echo. If somebody's got an echo going, just mute yourself for a second. Here's the outfit you're talking about, Stephanie.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the same one that she's wearing when she later in the guest quarters.
Let's see.
It is blue, but it doesn't have the hood. And it looked a little different. She has like a necklace.
Mm-hmm. I see it here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. I think it's the same one, but I just thought it looked really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Really stylish.
It is a cool necklace.
But when the away team's on the planet and they're like, who's in charge, Picard or the Admiral? And then Tasha Yar is uncomfortable. And then she looks at the captain like, what do I do for assistance? And Data's uncomfortable, but he's not emotional about it. But then Worf and Geordi are just like, we're just doing our job. We're just going to follow the orders. And they don't seem to have the same discomfort. I thought that was interesting. I don't think that was intentional. But I did like how at least Tasha and Data were giving us the element that this is an uncomfortable situation. And I think that's it.
Great stuff. And everybody, again, that's the introvertedrepublic.com. You can get that shirt that Stephanie's wearing. It's a new creation from Melissa. It's walking art made by Melissa, in fact. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is also here. Thank goodness. How are you today? And what do you think of this episode? Uh-oh, we can't hear you.
On mute.
Wait, here we go. Let's fix that. There you go.
I got it. Okay. I thought it was kind of messy, and I felt like they shot a bunch of scenes, chopped them up, and then edited them all together. And for me, it was just not great. And starting out, Jameson is supposed to be 85 years old. 85? You look like freaking Moses. Way older than it. Who looks like that when they're 85? The neck veins grossed me out. And trust me, I don't get grossed out very easily. And I thought, oh my God, of course they disappear while he's going through his Benjamin Button phase. But I looked at some of the notes about this. Dorothy Fontana quit the show over this episode.
Really?
I thought was
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I can see
So
that.
this was the last one that she wrote.
Maybe. But one of the things I noticed that I thought was interesting was at one point she says to Mark, he's looking at something, and she says, "You're watching your tape." And I thought, tape? They have tape in the future? What? No digital? Or whatever. It's not really a nitpick. It was a strange when they're not obviously never use tape to watch anything or watching whatever it is in the future or some form of digital. But I wrote down some of the words that Beverly said. Red cell count running riot. Stephanie, can you explain in medical terms?
That didn't make any sense.
And the DNA, Mohammed, DNA is skewed.
Yeah, that one got me too. Like, what? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt they underutilized, as usual, Denise. How many lines did you have? 3?
Oh yeah, if that. However, I do get to fire my phaser and take out 2 guys. And you see me, it's subtle, but I move the captain over and jump in front of him. At least, for a second, Tasha is, kicking some butt. But yeah, this was one of those episodes. I had to stand there on the bridge.
I wrote set decoration.
I would just daydream. Think about what food I was going to steal from the set of Cheers.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, Sue. All right, everybody. Close the doors. Lock them. Chris McGee is here. How are you today, Chris? Awesome new shirt. Welcome. What do you think of this episode?
Thank you. So, yes, as everyone has already mentioned, yeah, it's a bit of a snoozer of an episode, but I think probably the largest reason for that is because there's a lot of backstory that has to be conveyed in this episode, and they kind of just decided to make it. I understand they had a time constraint, but they convey that via dialogue and monologues, and I think they should really have shown some flashbacks or something rather than just telling here's what happened all those years ago over and over. Also, by the way, my positive thing to say about this episode, there was no Wesley, so there was no miracle resolution to this. Actually, my positive thing to say is that I thought at the very end, the actor who played Jameson, Clayton Rohner, was doing, I thought, maybe an excellent job of conveying his pain, the shakings, combined, of course, with the makeup, with the red eyes, pale lips, all the sweat and everything. I thought he did a good job right there at the very end of that. While he was wearing the old age makeup, maybe not so much, but definitely there towards the end when he was fighting the disease, the drugs effects. I didn't hear any NAMs in this episode, unfortunately, but that's all right. Melissa kind of took the passive aggressive phrase from Picard there. Thank you, Mr. Data. I've heard that sound before. But so I'm going to make my phrase of the episode. You just upended the bottle or whatever it was.
Thank you, Dark Lord, Mr. Chris McGee. Good stuff. I did think about the West thing too. When all of you, Denise, transported to the planet and Picard says, Riker, you have the bridge. I swear I want him to be like, Riker, Wesley has the bridge. Let him know. he'll say Mai is live in Tokyo. You have the bridge, Mai.
Thank you.
I love that.
Yeah. A lot of stuff to say about this, actually. So I'm going to go quickly through it. But I thought that the first scene when Karnos was on the screen, the Nazi eagles, that was just I was really uncomfortable with those eagles there in that screen. That did not make me happy, to be honest. But then when Jameson was getting younger, I thought, what a great way to celebrate Trans Visibility Day with the eyeshadow and the eyelashes. Very Rocky Horror, excellent. Like that. What else? A couple of quotes by Picard. He asked Jameson why he feels the need to be young to negotiate for the hostages, and I thought the lack of answer was really interesting. What value youth, what value experience? That was kind of a cool thing. Then at the end, Picard asks Beverly, "Can you ease the pain?" I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition. What's the pain of increasing youth? Typically something we associate with aging, so that was kind of interesting. The last part of the episode, though, Karnos says, "Rest, your long night and mine is over." And I thought that was really interesting because I think what that is comes from an old marching song from England in 1886 by a guy called Edward Carpenter. It's called "England Arise, the long night, the long, long night is over." Edward Carpenter was a very interesting guy. He was a utopian socialist, a poet, a philosopher, early activist for gay rights, actually, and a huge advocate of vegetarianism. So I really liked they brought that in. It was a very cool quote. If you look, "England Arise, the long, long night is over." It's a long marching song as England was going through some changes at that point, but it's weird. It's been shortened down and lost some stanzas and become a hymn that's used now. But I think that's where they got that quote from. And I wanted to ask Denise, did you notice any sort of weirdness on set? Because I was reading the backstory on Memory Alpha for the way that the script was written and changed, and there was people wanting to sue other people about how it was written. And what was the set like at that time? Was it really antagonistic, or how did it feel?
Boy, I don't recall any of that happening. I mean, it was a big surprise for me to hear that Dorothy Fontana, quit over this one. So, I mean, that's an indication that there must have been a lot of, real stress and tension. Again, we were sort of kept at bay with that stuff. We would hear like rumors or mumblings, but the producers really didn't want the writers with the actors, which was a problem ultimately for me. But they really wanted, to control, to kind of keep us in the dark a little bit about what was going on, what was transpiring behind closed doors, for whatever control, reasons, and keep everything at bay. So I did not know, I didn't feel, and as much as I can remember, any tension or anything like that.
Wow, thanks.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Courtney, what is up? I love your shirt. Or is it like the full thing or just a shirt?
It's just a shirt.
Nice. It looks awesome. How are you today?
I'll step into the full thing later too.
Dr. Courtney Lewis. What do you think of this episode?
So To me, this episode was like somebody bringing you this big tray of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, and then you bite into them and they're raisins. Right? I mean, they're still cookies, right? They're still cookies. Was a little disappointing given how much they had to work with this episode. I mean, you know, it's written as this kind of side commentary on the Iran-Contra scandal, and we have these kind of explorations of the interpretations and use and misuse of the Prime Directive, but then the consequences of those kind of decisions, which then harken back to original series, Private Little War, where the Klingons, you know, interfere, and then Kirk has to come in. So there's so much richness in what the episode is offering, but ultimately we get the raisins, and they're still delicious, and there's still good things in there. I love the premise, but I just wanted more. I wanted them to dive in more. Also, I wanted more, like everyone else said, more Worf, who had one line, I think, more Tasha, more Deanna, more Troy, who could have taken this in a kind of a different direction. And my favorite quote from this episode is the galactic understatement. Not good is a galactic understatement. I feel like I also need a shirt with that on it as well. Oh, and I thought Michael Pataki did a great job as Karnos. I thought
Speaking of original series.
Yeah.
He was in The Trouble with Tribbles, everybody. Hauled away as garbage. Great stuff. Thank you, Courtney. That was pretty much the best metaphor ever, wasn't it? Like, have you ever bitten in and you think it's chocolate chip? And you're like, oh, it's oatmeal raisin. I mean, it's cool, I guess. Anna Post is also here, and she is also cool. What do you think of this episode?
I think most people have already stated the issues I have with this episode with the aging makeup, and it wouldn't necessarily have been so, I mean, yeah, it was grossly bad, but like the fact that you had him and stated his age at 85 as opposed to like 110, but that his wife was right there and very natural and looking great. I'm like, how much older is he than his wife? Or did he like really age that much worse than she did? And I get that they have to then make him himself again and young, but it just, you have that visual that's so grossly off between the two of them, that just kind of slapped you in the face a little bit more. And then as he gets younger, he just, the randiness of just like, let's go. Like, that just was very uncomfortable. And do you really, even if you're like happy to be able to do anything for the first time in years, like, do you really just go at your wife like that? It didn't feel right. Where she's basically fighting him off for a second. I didn't love how that scene went. I think there was a much better way to do that and show that need without like jumping on her. And also, why didn't Troy pick up his deceptiveness? Like, she's right there in the room and she's picking up something hidden from the guy on the view screen a planet away, but not the guy sitting 2 chairs away. That always sort of like, isn't that her entire job, is to catch those little things? He's hiding something, and it just, I don't know. Those were sort of my big nitpicks. That sort of pulled me out a lot on this episode, but yeah,
he definitely did set phasers to pounce at one point. It was a little excessive for sure.
And the whole, well, I did this for us, and I got enough doses for both of us because I was thinking of you, but then I took them both because the mission mattered more than you did. Like, That's not actually caring for your wife. That's caring for your own ego. Like, who cared? Like, why mention that you got enough for both of them if then you downed it yourself anyway?
Because he wanted to be like, well, it's the thought that counts, right, Cirroc?
Yeah, I was just waiting for him to say, "You're old. Why am I even explaining this to you?"
I don't think it's going to work out anymore.
He was that much of a jerk.
Well, the complete opposite of a jerk, Allison Leach Hyde, is here wearing an awesome Seventh Rules shirt that you can get at our Teespring store in the link at the description box below. How are you, Allison? What's new? What'd you think?
I'm good. As soon as you said my name, my dog started barking, so that's great. So hopefully they'll stop soon. Like everyone, I felt it was a very clunky episode. You could feel that bits were rushed. The script was not put together in a cohesive fashion. From what I read, why DC sued or wanted to sue with this one is that Roddenberry's lawyer kept putting scenes in, and he was not a guild writer, and so she's like, I'm suing. This is she had a partner whose name I'm sorry I've forgotten, but I think this episode really failed because of that. And a couple other things, I thought some shots were like staging of where all the actors were standing was weird. Like there's in the ready room, we're on Jameson in the support chair, and we have, Deanna's torso like right next to his face. I'm like, why? I think that's so, yeah, it felt clunky to me, and for all the reasons everyone has already said. Yeah, so I think I'll leave it there.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because I saw the blocking was really poorly done. I thought also the scene with Karnas and Picard in the end, when they were heads up with each other, Karnas was sitting it was a higher up on some type of platform, and just the blocking, it just didn't look right.
All right. Well, it's time to bring some cheer in here. Unfortunately, Homer Frizzell is up next, everybody. Just kidding. We love you, Homer. What do you think of this one?
Well, I have to echo what Muhammad said about the lighting. Thus, my background. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a guy back there who's getting younger by the moment. And as soon as the lights come on, he's going to be 20 years younger. And so I'm trying to replicate that for myself, and I'll turn on the lights later and see what happens. It's also why I have the Titan shirt, because people say it's a little dark on set. But I want to say something I noticed, and I don't know if I disagree with the blocking comments or not, or it's just sort of a different way of putting it. But some of the camera angles were interesting to me. Like here we get to see the backs of a couple of chairs that you ordinarily wouldn't get to see. And then there's another scene where Picard is coming up in the turbo lift. And he's like readying himself before he goes out on the bridge. And so we're going up the turbo lift with him. And then we see from over his shoulder as he exits onto the bridge. And so I appreciated those shots, let's say. I do think that the rule of three is important. And that if you have this guy in darkness more than 3 times, it gets old. And so it got very, very old. No pun, perhaps, intended.
Okay,
That's
Homer
it from
Frizzell,
here.
everybody. He's going to be here all week.
Getting younger. Thank you.
All right. Carrie Schwent, finally, it is time for you and, let me guess, some limericks and some excellent points. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. The scene at the end when he dies hit me a little harder than it normally would, because unfortunately lost another cat about a week ago and had to pick up her ashes today. So watching that today was a little rough, but I got through it. And yeah, this episode, yeah. So many things have been covered. I've got a couple things, but I'll get into those later. But a fun fact about the actress that played the wife, I found out she only recently just died. I think last year in 22, a couple weeks shy of her 105th birthday.
Wow.
Which I thought was very cool. Yeah, she was fantastic in the episode. I loved every single one of her outfits.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll end with the limerick, but at the 25-minute mark, there's an extra in the background sitting on a bench. You see sort of only like half of her, and she gets handed a pad, and then she's like sitting and like rocking a little bit, rubbing her leg or something. I want to know that story. I want to know what kind of bad news that poor woman just got. She's obviously going through something. So kudos to that actress in the background, giving us, something to watch that was fairly interesting. I did like Deanna. I wish, they could have used her a little bit more, because in that first scene, she is staring daggers at the Admiral, because she can tell something stinky's going on, but she doesn't really say anything other than she senses that something's being held back from the guy on the view screen, not the guy 4 feet from her. But the good thing about the only good thing I thought about the episode was that bit at the end with Picard and Riker, and I wrote that that entire exchange down. So I decided to use that as the basis for my limerick, so I will end with that. We all have the urge to be young, a race that will never be won. Wisdom and age have their graces, time often shows on our faces, but the point of the race is to run. The first two lines came out really quickly. It took me a minute to come up with the rest, but I think it turned out pretty decent.
That's great stuff, Carrie. Really good eagle eye watching the background actors. I love doing that too. That's really good stuff.
I love watching all the people whenever I'm watching a baseball game. I watch like the plays, but I love people watching, and you see some people doing some really fun stuff in the background, and my husband never notices that stuff.
Also, Deanna Troi did look at the Admiral like a couple, and I thought it was really good director's choice to show her kind of looking at him like suspiciously. A really great shot. I noticed that a couple times, but then it didn't.
But it never went anywhere.
Never paid off.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
And Marina is so good at that.
Really good.
I totally believed her in her curiosity as to something's off here.
And skepticism. It was. I agree. It was really good. Really good acting on her part. Any final thoughts, Cirroc and Denise? Lots of things.
I was going to say that I think Data is he's such the master of the blank look, when he just kind of like does this blank look where he's like, I'm indifferent about something. I don't have an opinion on it. And he's just so good at that. I like the uniform that they designed for Jameson. It had the gold trim around the side on the arms and the asymmetrical kind of lines on the front. Nice design. I liked when the wife said to her husband, she was like, "Mark," and he says, "I hope you're heading to the bedroom." That little moment I really liked, because that felt real to me. Like, whoa, wait a minute, this guy's young and he's ready to get it in.
Make sure to say his lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it in.
Yeah.
Get it in. Okay.
That's sometimes.
Wow.
It work.
Red alert.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Geordi sees infrared light. That was something I learned in this episode when he was able to see that infrared. And I guess finally I was just going to say that I felt like they could sum up the whole first season in Picard's line in this episode, which was not good is a galactic understatement. That's how I feel so far. That's where we're at
kill
right
me now. Kill me now. Jeez.
It's felt like that. I mean, and the thing is, they really have some great concepts, which they touched on in this episode, but they didn't execute properly, and it just didn't. You know, they were trying to throw in so many things. I just felt like this guy needs to be court-martialed for doing the stuff he did. There was so many different things flying through my head. How he was treating his wife and their relationship, and that could have been a whole story by itself. And then I was thinking, where was this guy this whole time? You know, I didn't even know how they found him. I just was confused watching this episode. It was just a little bit confusing for me. And, but there were some good moments that you get, like the ones between Crusher and Picard, the ones between Data and Geordi. And then the away team that they assembled, I was like, dude, this away team, you can't have an away team with all these senior officers. They had Worf, Tasha, Data, Picard. It was like everybody was on that away mission. I was like, well, who's going to be left to run this ship? But yeah, that's all I got to say. Wasn't much there.
What do you think, Denise?
Oh God, this is a hot mess. I mean, it just is a hot mess. I don't care. I don't care about any of it. It just isn't interesting to me in any stretch of the imagination, even though I'm trying to sort of understand the notion of, you know, how far we'll go, the kind of, you know, interesting sort of juxtaposition of taking whatever poison we can take, you know, to restore youth and beauty, you know, and we're still struggling with that. You know, we're just, it's every era, every culture, you know, they find some notion of this. But again, this episode doesn't explore it in a deep way that provokes thought and analysis. You know, it just, they're struggling so much with just glomming on, you know, a little action adventure with a hostage situation. And again, yeah, the hostage, this guy has done, Jameson has done the most, you know, immoral act, and he confesses it. He's an admiral who's been able to get away all these years and rise to, you know, this rank. And I mean, I would have slammed his ass in jail right then and there. You're not going to, you know, you don't get to go on the away team anymore. You know, you're done. Your career is over. What you've just admitted is not, you know, acceptable. That's it. Done. Your career's over. So I never understand the logic sometimes of these shows. For instance, when they go to the final away team, away mission to confront, you know, Carnas, or what's his name? Carnas. Where's Tasha? Tasha should be on every single away mission. She's the chief of security. She's got to, you know, protect them. She wouldn't let the captain go with Crusher. I mean, it's like, I don't know. This misses so many marks for me. So many.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can try to create a positive thing out of, but I feel like I'm making, something out of nothing.
Well, I did.
But was this the end of DC Fontana on this show, though? Is that
I believe so. I think so. I think I don't know for sure, but I mean, I know there was tremendous issues in that writer's room and staffing those writers and getting these scripts. And I know that Gene's lawyer, God, I can see him too, and I can't. Leonard, I think his name is Leonard. He was always around, and we used to, at a certain point, we used to say to each other, "What? This guy's not. He's not a writer. He's a lawyer."
Mm-hmm.
He's like, and there was like this creepy vibe. A lot of these. It was like Gene's, yes men were around a lot, and they weren't contributing. And I can imagine Dorothy Fontana just saying, "What? Enough! How dare you tell me how to write a scene?" So this was there was a lot of problems at this point, and they were starting to really bubble up now.
Mm-hmm.
We're about halfway in.
Well, the last writing credit she has is 4 episodes from now, but it's a story by. Meaning she was part of the room before, and she, so she was probably gone after this one. And then a few episodes later, they gave her a story by credit because she contributed in some way.
But they also filmed these things out of order. So
true.
Yeah.
The other one.
Absolutely.
Well, everybody, we got to roll out. But shout out to DC Fontana for writing some great episodes back in the day, and for taking a stand, and also for being an icon. Pretty badass.
Yeah, absolutely. Legendary.
Yeah.
And thank you to Justin, Sue, Stephanie, Muhammad, Eve, Chris, Mai, Courtney, Carrie, Allison, and Homer, who are also icons in their own rights. I'll have you know. For Denise and myself and Cirroc and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, we'd like to thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all next time on The Seventh Rule.
Bye.
Oh, wait, I forgot to share these results. There you go.
Oh.